Once upon a time, there lived a golden retriever named Zoe, who believed the whole world was made of tennis balls and treat jars. Her tail wagged like a windshield wiper set to pure joy, and her eyes sparkled with the kind of optimism that could make even the grumpiest mailman smile. Zoe lived with the Peyton family in a cozy house on Mulberry Street. There was Mom, who always saved the best bits of her sandwich crusts for Zoe. Dad, who pretended he didn't like dogs but somehow always ended up with Zoe's head in his lap during movie nights. And 8-year-old Nina, who was Zoe's favorite person in the whole wide world. For 3 beautiful years, Zoe greeted every day like it was Christmas morning. Rain meant puddles to splash in. Snow meant zoomies in the backyard. And thunderstorms? Well, thunderstorms meant the most wonderful thing of all, extra cuddle time with her family. "Look at her," Mom would say, watching Zoe stretch out contentedly during storms, completely unbothered by the rumbling sky. "Nothing phases our brave girl." Dad would scratch behind Zoe's ears. "She's tougher than all of us put together." And Nina would curl up next to Zoe on her dog bed, reading stories aloud while the thunder rolled overhead like a gentle giant snores. But then came the 4th of July when Zoe was 3 years old. The Peytons had decided to stay home that year instead of going to the community fireworks display. It was supposed to be a quiet evening at home. Nobody expected what happened next. As twilight painted the sky purple, the first firework exploded somewhere in the neighborhood. Then another. And another. Soon the air was filled with sharp cracks and booming explosions that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Some neighbors had apparently decided to put on their own show, and the sounds echoed off houses and trees, creating a chaotic symphony of pops, bangs, and whistles. Zoe, who had been peacefully chewing her favorite rope toy in the living room, suddenly froze. Her ears shot up, her body went rigid, and her eyes went wide with terror. The next explosion sent her scrambling toward the hallway, her nails clicking frantically on the hardwood floor. "Zoe?" Nina called, confused. "Where are you going, girl?" But Zoe was already diving under Nina's bed, her whole body shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. The fireworks continued for what felt like hours, each boom sending fresh waves of panic through the poor dog's body. The family tried everything. Dad got down on his hands and knees, speaking in his softest voice. "Come on out, Zoe girl. It's okay. It's just fireworks." Mom brought treats, shaking the bag that usually brought Zoe running from 3 rooms away. "Look what I have, sweetie." Nina lay flat on her bedroom floor, her face inches from where Zoe was hiding. "Please come out, Zoe. I'm scared when you're scared." But Zoe wouldn't budge. She stayed under that bed until long after the last firework had faded into silence, her breathing rapid and shallow, her eyes darting toward every little sound. 3 weeks later, the first thunderstorm of summer rolled in. The Peyton family was having dinner when they heard the familiar rumble in the distance. They all looked at each other, thinking the same thing. Surely Zoe would be fine. After all, she'd loved thunderstorms her whole life. But as the thunder grew closer, they watched their beloved dog transform before their eyes, her ears flattened against her head, her tail tucked between her legs, and when the first real crack of thunder shook the house, Zoe bolted from her spot by the kitchen table and disappeared. They found her in the same place, under Nina's bed, trembling and panting as if she'd run a marathon. "Oh no," Mom whispered, her heart breaking. "She thinks it's fireworks." And so began Zoe's new life ruled by fear. Every rumble in the distance sent her scrambling for safety. She developed an uncanny ability to sense storms hours before they arrived, becoming restless and clingy as the barometric pressure changed. The moment the first thunder rolled across the sky, she would vanish under Nina's bed, sometimes staying there for hours, even after the storm had passed. The family tried everything they could think of. They bought special anxiety wraps and calming supplements. They played thunderstorm sounds at low volumes, hoping to gradually desensitize her. They rearranged furniture to make her hiding spot more comfortable, adding blankets and her favorite toys. Nothing seemed to help. Their once fearless Zoe had become a prisoner of her own panic. One particularly bad night in August, a summer storm raged for nearly 4 hours. Lightning illuminated the sky in brilliant flashes, and thunder shook the windows. The power flickered on and off. Zoe had been under the bed since the first distant rumble at dinner time. Now at midnight, she was still there, panting heavily and shaking despite the cool night air. Mom sat on the floor next to Nina's bed, her hand extended under the frame, gently stroking whatever part of Zoe she could reach. "I don't know what to do," she whispered to Dad, who was kneeling beside her. "She's so scared, and I can't make it better." Nina, who should have been asleep, was lying awake listening to her dog's rapid breathing. "Mom," she said quietly, "is Zoe going to be okay?" It was the question they'd all been avoiding. Mom's voice caught in her throat. "I don't know, sweetheart, but we're going to keep trying to help her." Dad cleared his throat. "Maybe we should call Dr. Quist tomorrow. See if there's something else we can do." As if responding to their conversation, another crack of thunder split the night, and they could feel Zoe press herself even further under the bed, trying to become as small as possible. Dr. Quist had been Zoe's veterinarian since she was a puppy. She was a kind woman with gentle hands and a way of speaking to animals that made even the most nervous pets feel safe. Sound sensitivity after trauma is actually quite common, she explained, examining Zoe thoroughly. That night with the fireworks created a very powerful fear memory. Now her brain is trying to protect her from what it perceives as the same danger. "But how do we help her?" Dad asked, holding Zoe steady on the examination table. "It's going to take time and patience," Dr. Quist said. "Think of it like this. Zoe's brain has learned that certain sounds mean danger. We need to very slowly teach it that these sounds can be safe again." She prescribed a mild anti-anxiety medication for severe storms and outlined a careful desensitization plan. Start with recordings of storms at the very lowest volume, so quiet you can barely hear them yourself. Play them while doing things Zoe loves, eating, playing, getting treats. Very gradually, over weeks or months, you can increase the volume. The key is to never let her get scared during training. If she shows any signs of anxiety, you've gone too fast. Nina raised her hand like she was in school. "What if there's a real storm while we're training?" "Then you give her all the love and support you can," Dr. Quist said with a smile. "Create a safe space for her. Stay calm yourselves. And remember that healing isn't always a straight line. There will be setbacks, and that's okay." The Peyton family threw themselves into helping Zoe with the dedication of scientists and the hearts of people who loved her more than anything. They downloaded storm sounds and played them at volumes so low they had to strain to hear them. They gave Zoe treats during these sessions, played with her favorite toys, and lavished her with praise. For the first few days, even the barely audible rumbles made Zoe's ears perk up nervously. But gradually, she began to associate the sounds with good things. When the recording played, treats appeared. When the recording played, Nina got extra playful. When the recording played, nothing bad happened. Week by week, they turned the volume up just a tiny bit. Some days went better than others. There were times when Zoe would hear a sound that was just a little too loud and would trot toward Nina's bedroom, only to stop halfway and look back at her family, confused. "Good girl!" Mom would cheer during these moments. "You're so brave, Zoe." The real test came 6 weeks into training when a small afternoon storm rolled through. The thunder was distant and gentle, nothing like the violent explosions of that July night. The family held their breath as the first rumble reached their house. Zoe's ears twitched. She looked toward the hallway that led to Nina's bedroom. Then she looked at her family, all of whom were sitting on the floor patting the carpet and calling her name softly. For a moment that stretched like eternity, she stood frozen between her old fear and her new trust. Then slowly, she walked over to Nina and lay down with her head in the little girl's lap. They all cried a little that day. It was a Tuesday evening in October when the weather forecast showed a line of strong storms approaching. The family watched the radar with nervous anticipation. This would be Zoe's biggest test yet. They prepared carefully. Nina's bedroom was set up with extra blankets and pillows just in case. The anxiety medication was ready if needed. But they also prepared the living room with all of Zoe's favorite things: her squeaky hamburger toy, a fresh Kong stuffed with peanut butter, and soft blankets spread across the floor. As the storm approached, Zoe began to show the familiar signs of stress. She followed Mom from room to room, pressed close to Dad's legs, and watched Nina with worried eyes. But she didn't run. When the first thunder rolled overhead, the whole family sat on the floor in the living room. "Come here, brave girl," Dad said softly. Zoe looked toward the hallway. Then she looked at her family. She took one step toward the hallway, then stopped. Another rumble shook the house, and she whimpered softly. Nina patted the blanket next to her. "You can stay with us, Zoe. We're not scared." And somehow, incredibly, Zoe chose trust over fear. She walked over to her family and lay down in the middle of their circle, her body still tense but her eyes focused on their faces instead of scanning for escape routes. When the thunder boomed loudest, Mom stroked her fur and spoke in soothing tones about what a good, brave dog she was. When lightning lit up the windows, Dad scratched behind her ears in just the spot that always made her back leg kick. When the rain pounded against the roof, Nina read to her from their favorite book about a dog who goes on adventures. Zoe stayed with them through the entire storm. Zoe never became completely fearless of thunderstorms again, and that was okay. Some fears, once learned, never fully disappear, but she learned something more valuable than fearlessness. She learned that she didn't have to face her fears alone. Now, when storms approach, Zoe still gets nervous. Her ears still flatten, and she still seeks comfort. But instead of hiding under the bed, she seeks out her family. She's learned that the safest place during a storm isn't under a piece of furniture. It's surrounded by the people who love her most. The Paytons sometimes find Zoe lying peacefully by the windows, watching the sky with calm interest. If they listen carefully, they can hear her contentment in the soft sighs she makes as she settles into sleep. Nina likes to say that Zoe didn't just overcome her fear. She learned something about love. She learned that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. Nina explains to anyone who will listen. It means you trust the people who love you to keep you safe. And on the anniversary of that terrible July night, when fireworks once again filled the sky, Zoe stayed curled up in the living room with her family, her head resting peacefully on Nina's lap, listening to the gentle sound of Dad reading the newspaper and Mom humming softly while she knitted. The explosion still made her ears twitch, but her tail wagged gently against the floor because she knew, without any doubt, that she was exactly where she belonged. Some stories end with the hero conquering their fear completely, but Zoe's story is about something more beautiful than that. It's about the gift of trust and the power of patient love. On quiet nights, when the wind whispers through the trees and no storms threaten the horizon, Zoe dreams the dreams of a dog who knows she is deeply loved. And in her dreams, thunder sounds like distant laughter, and lightning looks like camera flashes at a party where everyone is celebrating the brave, sweet dog who learned that the best way to face any storm is together. The Payton family learned something too, that sometimes the greatest act of love isn't taking someone's pain away, but sitting with them in it and showing them they're not alone. And if you listen very carefully on stormy nights, in houses all around the world, you can hear the sound of families choosing love over fear, patience over frustration, and hope over despair. You can hear the soft words of comfort, the gentle touches of reassurance, and the quiet promise that no matter how loud the thunder gets, love will always be louder. Zoe's tail still wags to the rhythm of that promise every single day. Zoe's journey reminds us that healing doesn't always mean erasing fear. It often means learning to live with it, surrounded by those who refuse to let you face it alone. In a world that praises toughness, Zoe and the Peyton family gently remind us that real bravery looks a lot like trust, patience, and showing up with love, especially when it's hard. If you've ever faced your own kind of storm, may this story stay with you like a soft paw on your heart. And if stories like this bring you comfort or hope, feel free to stick around. We share many more moments just like this. Sometimes the smallest clicks, whether that be a like or being our new subscriber, can help spread the biggest kinds of love. Zoe thanks you for subscribing.